This is Festival Pass Stories, a podcast series is told by the people who create and make festivals come to life. You will go behind the stage, kitchen, or studio door to hear the stories of passion and inspiration that started some of the world's most beloved festivals. Hear the startup stories and how an idea went from what if to what's next. All right, friends, it is Festival Pass Stories. Welcome back. We take you behind the stage, studio door, or in this case, behind the mic, behind the writer's room door to hear the story of passion and inspiration it took to become a professional comedian, professional working comedian, and to work the stages of comedy festivals and clubs around the country. Friends, please welcome the very funny Larry Fulford. Larry, I'm going to start. Thank you, Larry. I'm going to start with the trickiest question of 2020. It is not multiple choice. It is very simple, although it could take our entire time here. How are you?
Oh man, what a loaded question. No,
Sure is.
I'm all things considered, I'm doing fine. Like, it could be way worse. So I'm grateful. I'm doing fine. Obviously I miss shows and I miss all that stuff, but I'm grateful to like not have things like children. So I just have to take care of myself. So
a little bit more time.
Yeah. I'm not losing my mind. I mean, slowly spiraling, but if I had like kids or responsibilities, I would be probably a lunatic right now. So
a whole different thing. And you answered that in under 30 seconds. There's got to be a world record for answering that question. So he's a man of brevity, folks.
I think about that a lot.
Yeah. Now, have you ever been introduced as someone says, please welcome Larry Fulford, instead of when you're walking to the stage, please welcome this a very funny man. He's a very funny man. I'll tell you all about. Like, if you get a crappy introduction, how do you handle that? Like, somebody is just working the open mic night or working the club, and maybe you've been out there like 7-8 nights in a row. You're tired. You get different audience reactions every night, but then you get introduced by somebody who's like, all right, folks, we're gonna move on with the show, and up next is Larry. Larry, come on up. You're like, how do you handle that?
So this might be kind of weird, but I honestly prefer the low key. I prefer the "This is Larry,"
Yeah.
And I've talked to some comedian friends about this too. Like, kind of the worst thing you can do is overhype, because then it's like, then you got everybody's expectations. Like, your next guy's the funniest guy in the world. This guy, give it up, and then you come up and you're like,
Yeah.
So
we start once you like an improv comedy. They're like, don't start here because you can't go any higher. Like,
right.
Let's start here and we work up to this.
Right. Let's just go. This next guy's name is Larry. Right. And then let me try to build. And I might not build. We might just keep it at that, honestly, for 30 minutes.
Folks, the energy is going to stay right where he just left it. So
that's it. Yep.
Yeah. If you haven't gone to the bathroom, you might want to go now.
Go during my entire set.
Yeah. I would agree with you on the poor introduction. When I'm not hosting the Festival Pass Stories podcast, I'm an auctioneer and an MC, and I'm usually in a room of 500 people. We can't be in a room of 5 people right now, so no one's doing those live events, obviously, which is why you're not in a comedy club right now, and so on. But maybe I am a comedian at heart, not a funny one, but maybe I have some of those qualities of a comedian, because I also like that poor introduction, and I can either tease the person who just gave me the poor introduction or just run with it in my own way. And what I would always say, and I'm sure I stole this from somebody, is they'd be like, okay, and folks, you know what we're here for. We're here to raise money. So let's welcome our auctioneer. I think is it Pat Tuley? Is it Tully? Pat, come on up. And then that's the introduction. I get up there and nobody's clapping, and I'm like, well, thanks, Joe, for really whipping them up into a frenzy for me.
Yeah. The old I don't care, like the old where's he at? That whole move. Yeah, that's a good one.
I think he's here somewhere in the room. I'm gonna take a wild guess and say that you may enjoy your sports. You were in Chicago. That's where you were living last before COVID. The Bears beat the Giants on Sunday. Was that a bad Bears win or a good Giants loss, do you think, in that situation?
Here's what's going to be fun is, so I don't really follow sports at all, so I feel like I should just answer that question as though I know what I'm talking about.
It was football I'm talking about. American football. Excuse me.
Yeah, American football. I saw Guns N' Roses at Soldier Field. That's the closest I got to Soldier Field.
Hey, well, there was probably some fighting going on there, so that's sport.
Certainly some drunken. It had a football vibe. I'll just guess a bad Bears win. That sounds right. That just historically, that sounds right.
Chicago rubbed off on you very well because I think that's how a lot of Bears. We had the football. We could have won the final play, and we did.
Oh yeah.
We're not very good, but a Bears fan said to me, "We are the worst 2-0 football team in the league." That's self-loathing right there.
Yeah, I used to follow football a bit, and when I was a kid or like a preteen, I was actually a Bears fan for I'm not sure any reason other than my family was like I had an uncle into it or something.
Yeah, you had no choice.
No choice.
Yeah,
I was like, he's got that hat. I want that hat too.
There's other teams I just hate, but I see some of their gear, and I was like, it's a pretty good hat. It's a pretty good shirt.
Yeah, for sure.
Can't wear it, but it's pretty good. Pretty good shirt.
That's the type of sports fan I am. It's the color combo. I'm like, Raiders are pretty. That's pretty cool. Yeah. I just want that.
Yeah, you're that guy who likes the fashion side of sports,
right? Right.
Yeah, that's unique. You could work on that. Could be some new material there. Back to comedy. Now I know you don't live on the comedy festival circuit, but this is Festival Pass. Everything is a festival in our world. We figured out how to have a guest on and turn a hockey game or another guest who's a former professional football player. We talked about kicking off the NFL season, and we're like, this is a festival in itself. And he's like, yeah, there's merch. People are coming to see talent. They're paying tickets. There's sponsors all over the place. Sure, an NFL game, an NHL game is a festival. Super Bowl, of course it's a festival. Now, I know you don't live on the comedy festival circuit, but you have been a participant. You've been talent at least a festival or multiple festivals. What's the difference between a comedy festival, at least the environment of a comedy festival, and a comedy club?
I mean, kind of what you just said, sort of. So it's the atmosphere. I mean, comics like to talk about it. I think I've done like 6 or something. I've been doing stand-up. It'll be 10 years in February, so I think I've done like maybe 6. And comics talk about it like it's comedy summer camp.
Yeah.
It's more of a not party, but it's more of like a big. It feels like a big thing. It feels like what you're doing is mildly important, and that more people like it than you might think. Because the crowds hopefully are bigger. And then it's just a chance. I mean, there are people that I'll see at a festival that I haven't seen in 4 years. It's summer camp. It's just it's a big hang. And then sometimes you do shows. I think that's probably the biggest difference. I think there's also a sort of pressure that's, at least for me, because I'm not like a comedy club guy. Like I mostly kind of booked little DIY tours when I could and did like rock clubs and stuff. But I think there's a pressure of doing like the big comedy club, and like, here's the host and the this and the this. And I think a festival just has more of like a chill. It's run by comics, right? So it's like, It's like the prisoners have taken over the prison sort of vibe.
Yeah, we have no idea what's happening here or if we have sponsors because nobody is in sales. But
right.
Our next comic is, let's bring up Larry. Larry, here.
Right.
Larry. And you're like, thank you. That's what I wanted. Yes, thank you for that crappy introduction. So you just said DIY comedy tour, the do-it-yourself comedy tour. I guess that's self-explanatory, but is that just you booking gigs and saying, I want to be in Chicago this month or this week, and I want to be in Mississippi. I want to be all over. This is where I'm going to go, or I'm going to go cross country, and I'm booking my own shows as I go.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't know that I'd ever call myself like a professional comedian. I've always had a part-time something back home. I've never cut the tie and been like, I'm all in. I have friends that did do that. Like they lived on the road for 6 years, that was never super appealing to me. So my move would be, I would just book like 2 weeks out when I could and just, like you said, when I lived in Florida, I would do little circuits of the Southeast. When I lived in Chicago, I'd go to Colorado or Michigan or Ohio. That's kind of a whole other world, right? Getting past at the clubs and stuff. And I never really went that route. I went the route of like, hey, this guy has a brewery in Michigan that runs comedy show. Let's go book that guy's brewery show. So
it sounds like free beer too, perhaps.
there's definitely free beer. It's mostly free beer. I mostly travel the country pouring beer in me and my car and just hope that I make it to the next place.
Yeah. Do you have that new Tesla that runs on electric? No, my car runs on free beer, or at least it better, because that's how I'm getting paid.
The 2007 Honda Element Beer Edition. Yeah, I drive that. That's what I have.
What do you think, besides comedy clubs and comedy festivals, what do you think is the big difference between a comedy festival and let's say a film festival, or perhaps another spoken word or art festival? Because stand-up is an art form, no doubt about that. So between poetry or something like that and a comedy festival, what do you think is the big difference between those?
Yeah, I don't know. I used to play music before I got into comedy. I was a touring musician for a while.
Okay.
And so I think the difference, I don't know, because comedy's so weird and it's so personal and subjective. I think the big difference is you don't know what you're going to get person to person, and not to insult like a poetry festival or something, but I think or even a music festival, if you're at a punk rock festival, you know that you're going to watch a bunch of punk rock bands. Poetry, you're going to see a bunch of poets. I think the thing about comedy is it's all over the place, it's so individualistic, right? It's so, you might see a guy get up there who's like Bill Burr and all ranty or whatever, and then you might see like a real understated alt comedy sort of kid or something. I think it's variety, if I had to say. I think a good comedy festival books a variety of comics and from various backgrounds, and then also stylistically, so you never know what you're going to get. I think that's what keeps it different.
So I know it's always been tough to do comedy. I have attempted to do stand-up comedy myself, but these days the audiences seem more sensitive than ever. What's it like out there right now? And do you find yourself writing a joke and saying, that's not going to work right now? And you're like, is it tougher to even write a joke these days?
We kind of mentioned that a second ago. I'm on the fence about that. Like I kind of, I certainly have comedy buddies that are like, people are too sensitive right now. And I'm like, I don't know, man. So be a better writer, right? Trick it. Like,
write better jokes.
Right.
Get more creative. Stop telling dick jokes. You can do better than that.
And I'm of the mindset, like, I definitely believe that you can joke about anything, or rather you can try to joke about anything. But I think it's all about, it's about understanding that not everybody might be on board with that. But I think Sarah Silverman and folks like that, they're able to write in such a way where you trick people into not hating you when you say the thing.
Yeah.
I don't think it's harder. I think it's harder. Yeah, I'll just say that and probably lose a bunch of friends. I think it's harder if you're a lazy writer.
Yeah. That's it. And that's why comedy is so difficult, because writers talk about writing. They say writing is rewriting. I've heard comedians talk about other comedians taking them under their wing, and some people say that some comedians just, they don't want to mentor you or whatever. But it seems like when people do get really good advice from other comedians, they hear, well, let me see one of your jokes. And they look at it and they're like, well, I would put this here and that there. Now say it. And it's like, oh, wow, that is funnier. It's like, you got to connect with people. Like, don't step on your punchlines. Connect with people by delivering the joke, but delivering it in a way where it's natural coming from you. But it's also just, and if it doesn't kill, it's probably the audience that night. But this is a good joke.
Right.
So what's the best piece of advice you've gotten from another comedian along your way? Maybe along one of your DIY tours, meeting random comedians along the way.
I mean, I've gotten a lot of great advice. The two pieces that come to mind, the first one is great advice that I just didn't follow. And that was early on. I was at an open mic. I'd only been doing this for like 5 or 6 months. And the guy hosting the open mic, I had some religious and sort of political stuff. And the way he worded it was perfect. He said something like, you might want to stay away from that, especially when you're starting out, because no matter what side of the joke you're on, if you're telling a conservative joke, you've lost that half of the room. And if you tell this, he just worded it great. Like the whole, no matter what side you're on, you're bound to lose some of the room. Yeah. I didn't adhere to that advice. I just thought he worded it great. But the best advice I probably got was this guy, his name is Arnie Ellis. He does acting, I think, more in LA now than comedy, but he because a lot of comics will ask rhetorical questions on stage, like, almost as a crutch, you know? And I used to do that a lot. And he's pulled me aside after a show and he goes, "Hey man, you need to be careful how many questions you ask the audience. What if you don't like their answer?"
Well, that's good. Very good point.
So I just cut them out. I was like, fair.
And it's funny, like, I used to see people, I think people still do it now. Well, they don't do it now because they can't go to comedy clubs. But I'm sure there were people who specifically went to comedy clubs not to enjoy funny and entertaining and clever writing and clever performers, but to get their frustrations out on comedians and call them hacks and heckle them and do whatever. And now I think they're just like, well, one of the best parts about being home all the time now is that I can just do it on Twitter all day long. Right? I was just talking to somebody about just every day. I'm like, do I delete the Twitter account? No, I don't. But I really have been borderline. It's just so negative. I did get a chance to look at a few of your tweets. Do you don't seem to be shy about holding back your opinions, to put it mildly. As a comedian, you don't want to put out I know you don't want to like put out new material or jokes out there, but as a comedian who also has a stance on politics and so on, do you have people who are like, I'm not following you anymore and I used to think you were funny or something like that?
I've had that a bit. Yeah. I used to I'm with you. I kind of want to delete all of it, honestly. If I didn't need social media for, you know, I mean, with the podcast, you understand, like, if you don't have a hobby that requires this, I would just bounce from all of it. I think that, I've definitely had heated moments. Like, I feel like more on Facebook than Twitter. I've had people message me on Twitter, send a message like, not "you used to be funny" or whatever, but they would kind of like quote my tweet at me and then tell me I'm wrong and then unfollow me. Mostly Facebook. Facebook was like a cesspool for me because when I was touring with music, the last bands I was playing with were kind of country-ish. They were kind of like rock, but also like country-ish. And so people would follow you on those tours, and then I would get home, and I think most of the fans are great, and most of the times are great. But then you also are obviously picking up that demographic, you know? I don't know. I'll just try to say it polite.
Very politely.
And also comedy
correct,
too.
At least in this.
Yeah. Like comedy's the same way, I think, because, or similarly, like, you know, when you're a country artist and people just assume something about you or your politics or your mindset, and then they might, if you're not shy about it on social media, they might be like, "What are you doing?" You know, I've definitely people have slid into my DMs to, like, you know, call me a fascist and argue about guns and stuff. That's always a blast. But comedy's the same way, because when you're a comedian, you're out there trying to make people laugh. So I think there's this false sense of people thinking they know who you are. And then they see you have an opinion on something, and they're like, "I kind of liked you better when you were just telling jokes at me."
And, you know, I've met some great comedians over the years and worked with them at events where they're the headlining comedian, and I'm doing the fundraising, where an organization will have, like, you know, let's laugh in the face of cancer, meaning they're using laughter as a way to try to raise money. And they'll have like a headliner, and then I'll connect with the headliner afterwards on social media, and just be like, you know, for the couple days afterwards, I'm like, maybe this person will like my comment or something. And I'll write something to them about a joke or something they put on there that was funny, and agree with them. And then some troll will come out and connect to the two of us. And, you know, and I'll be like, and say something just wildly negative and inappropriate. You're like, oh my God, this is the world we live in. Like, I'm not used to that. I'm not used to getting negative comments on Twitter, but I guess it's just, don't read them, right? If you see something, you're like, forget it. Don't take it personally, and just move on. So Twitter is a tough working environment.
Yeah.
Speaking of tough working environments for comedians, a lot of people won't do the comedy tour with the colleges. And colleges aren't even doing college right now, or at least they're doing it part-time, or they're trying to make this fall semester work. Some people are sending people home. State University of New York is sending all their people home and going virtual, I believe, as of this week. But
oh, wow.
If we were in normal times, would you go on the college tour right now?
Yeah, I would love to. I mean, that's another kind of, back to speaking to like clubs and the different avenues you can take with comedy. There are some gatekeepers and stuff involved. Uh, like getting in on the college circuit is actually kind of hard to do. But but I would love to. I'll run that risk
There
of
you go, festival
yeah.
fans. If you are running the entertainment at a university or a community college or anything, give Larry a call. As we introduced him before, he's a very funny guy. Please welcome Larry. Larry would love to come to your school and entertain or perhaps completely offend the students at your school.
Yeah, I would read. I think you're probably mentioning like, or thinking of like Seinfeld wrote those pieces about
Yes.
like colleges are ruining comedy or whatever. The sensitivity level at colleges is through the roof, and it's like, I think it just goes hand in hand with what we were just talking about. I think, are there people that go and just want to be upset by something?
Yeah.
Probably, but I also think that I think you can still be yourself on stage without being like, I think you can even get away with some stuff. I think you can get away with some dark stuff and like whatever and not lose people if they can tell you're kidding and if they like you. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't think that PC culture ruined comedy. I think PC culture has people who are married to the status quo, afraid of adapting.
Sure. And on that note, on adapting, cancel culture is something that is out there. And some people say, they even take another side of that. They're like, it's not cancel culture. It's just stop being a jerk, stop being narrow-minded, and look at what's happening around you in the world is changing, and stop with the bad behavior. Just be mindful and be decent to people. And that's better. I like that. Just be mindful, be decent. And speaking of being decent to people and other tough rooms, tough environments to perform in as a comedian, during quarantine, of course, there has been attempts at Zoom comedy, and it seems that a lot of this Zoom comedy is falling flat. As I mentioned, I am an auctioneer now. We have in the same screen and the same HD camera I'm staring into now, I stare into to do these virtual auctions, and I say, folks, now's the time for you to support. Instead of being in someone's face and shaming them into paying more for an auction item, running out into the crowd, I can't do that now. So now I'm trying to do it through this one-dimensional situation. So it's not easy. And I use humor and improv to really get the room going and have some fun and pit one bidder against another. Really hard to do when they're bidding virtually through a chat or something like that. I'm throwing a joke out there, and then somebody who watched it 2 days later will call me and say, oh, that was great. We raised a lot of money. Hey, that was really funny too. And I'm like, well, thank you. 48 hours later, I'm getting this. I thought it was pretty funny. I wrote it myself. I thought it was pretty good. They're like, yes. We had 5 people in our house. Everybody was laughing. I'm like, oh, okay, good. I've been waiting for some feedback. So you don't know if the feedback is going to be there. So do you think that Zoom is a good place to test out new material, use your old material, or are you doing any of the Zoom stuff? Or are you avoiding it altogether because it is just comedy in a void? It's talking, it's telling jokes into the void. What are your thoughts on it? And what have you seen? And, keeping all the real comedians' names secret to protect the innocent or the unfunny or the very funny. What do you think about the whole thing?
Honestly, at first I was opposed to it. Like I think in that first month of quarantine or shelter in place or whatever it was, I think if I got hit up like 2 or 3 times, hey, we're going to try this Zoom show. And I was like, nah, I'm good. Exactly for the reasons you just mentioned. Like it's not the same. And, the intimacy is lost and the immediacy is lost. So I said no without even trying it. And then I finally did. A buddy of mine's in Chicago. She did one and I tried it. And I started realizing you could do it and have fun with it. Like you can kind of lean into how weird it is.
Yeah.
I will drop this name. So a friend of mine, Carmen Morales, she's in LA Comics. She's been putting them on. I don't know when she did her first one. pretty much bi-weekly, and she does it right. She makes sure all the comics know in advance to have solid audio. They look good. She has a backdrop behind, like a practical backdrop behind her, and like she really cares. And I think that I've watched a bunch of, like, several of those, and I've watched the crowd respond to how much she's put into caring. And I think her caring makes the comics care, and it ends up being like kind of a quality show. So I think, like, I'm just kind of rambling, but I think it can be done well. But I'm also with you in. So she also does a thing where she lets you leave your cams and mics on, unless your dog is barking or whatever. It's disruptive. But the other good thing about Zoom shows is you can just mute somebody. Like, you can't do that at a live comedy show.
It's true.
So it's like
that is an excellent point.
Yeah, you can play God and be like, too much noise. As long as you're the host, yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I did the one I did, the other one I did just proactively. She left the mics off, but you could see people laughing. Yeah. As long as the gallery view was up, and it's just weird. It's like, yeah. And I'm like, I'm going to take that. I think that you love me, even if you're just making fun of me. But yeah, I think it can be done well. I completely understand comics not wanting to do it, for the same reasons you mentioned. Like, I have buddies that do music that don't want to do it because it feels weird. It's like you're just talking to yourself. But I think it can be done right, and I think the people who are willing to try to do it right are going to have a leg up for however long this lasts. And then also maybe to incorporate this on the other side of when things do get back to normal.
You said sensible backdrop. If you did play fantasy football, that would be a very cool name for your team. Sensible backdrop.
That's good. That's a good band name too.
Mine is Quarantine Tuxedo or Pandemic Tuxedo, because there's been so many great sales if I ever get in front of an audience again, like I run around, I sweat, and I'm always wearing a tux. So it's actually my uniform. It's not a fancy outfit. It's actually my uniform for these galas. Right. They were great sales. Retail is hurting right now, as many. So there's so many sales. And my wife was like, "What did you buy from X retailer who's not a sponsor of this show? So they will not get a shout out." But from X retailer, which rhymes with Lugo Nos. She said, "Why? What is this?" I said, "It's a Pandemic Tuxedo." She's like, "That's your fantasy football team right there, Pandemic Tuxedo."
That's really good.
I said, it was 80% off. It was better than standing in line. It was better than TJ Maxx. Like, I paid 20% of the retail price for this Mugo Nos Pandemic Tuxedo. So there you go, Pandemic Tuxedo. But have you taken this time to work on your craft, to write new material? Is the material, it never writes itself, I know. What's the material looking like these days?
Yeah, not very existent for me. I think since this time I've probably maybe worked on like 2 or 3 things that are brand new. What I've been using this time for is taking all the old stuff that was maybe not stuff that I would put in like a 30-minute set, for instance. It was still kind of figuring itself out. What I've done during the downtime is I'll actually just set up in a room, act like I'm at a show, and just practice like I'm which is impossible. Like, you need a live crowd to get good at comedy. So yeah. I'm sort of blindly optimistic that I've been doing this long enough so where I can kind of figure out the pacing without an audience. Yeah. But I'm using it to dust off old stuff, because the world is kind of crumbling right now, so it's hard to get in the mindset of writing something new, but I have plenty of stuff that I can, so let's see if there's anything there, and I'll record it and watch it back and try to see if there's something there. There's a bunch of open mics. There's a bunch of comedy open mics happening on Zoom, and I have a buddy in Chicago who's hit I think he hits like 5 or 6 a day sometimes. He's going to come out on the other side of this better than he went in, probably, honestly, because he didn't give up. He just stuck with it.
Besides looking at the old material, refining some of your best stuff, you've taken that time and used it wisely. Have you found any superpowers during this time? Like, you found out that you're a chef and you're like, wow, I really love cooking. Or I cannot believe how easy it is to speak French, or something like that. Or has it just been comedy, working on the old stuff, thinking about some new stuff? Some people find it incredibly hard to be inspired during this time. Other people have never had this kind of time on their hands, and they're like, they've been able to try things out and say, well, it looks like I am really bad at a lot of things I always thought I was really bad at, but I also enjoy doing this, and I'm going to do more of this going forward. So anything like that at all, instruments, language, food, painting, anything at all that outside of what you were doing pre-March 14th or so?
Not really. I mean, I have seen a bunch of my friends become bread makers, so I know that the world is going to be if nothing else, on the other side of this, there's going to be a lot more delicious bread.
Yes.
It's been hard, like, I'm not going to lie. Like a lot of people, I mean, there are just days where I wake up and just the limbo of not even knowing what January is going to look like, for instance. That's a thought I have. Like,
yeah.
The thing that's kind of kept me sane-ish is giving myself a schedule. Like, I didn't learn how to bake bread or anything like that. But I miss having, a part-time day job or knowing a schedule when I'm going on the road. So I built in working creatively as like a schedule. So I basically gave myself a day job. It ain't much. It's Tuesday through Thursday. So but it's something. So here's what I want to do at this time. And that keeps me from feeling kind of worthless. So I think it does wonders for the mental health too. I think that's a big deal.
It's a massive, massive thing, because some people have sadly got into an abyss, and that's tough to get out of. Absolutely. Speaking of tough to get out of or into, there's a painting behind you for those watching this and not just listening, but I'll describe the painting. It is a big, looks like a caramel sundae with a lot of whipped cream on top. And the person in that painting or picture looks a little bit like you with a baseball hat. Who is that behind you?
That's me. Hang on.
That is you.
Look at me. I can do this for the viewers.
I think he's going to recreate the Sunday photo here with the Sunday. Oh, there's the hat. Okay.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah.
Where's HC Wisconsin? They're not a sponsor of us either, so we won't give them any kind of promotion. And I know we only have a minute or so left here, but where does stand-up go from here? What about these small clubs? We have our friends at NIVA, the National Independent Venue Association. They're hurting. All these small venues around the country, music or comedy, are hurting. And in fact, here in New York, they just said in August, 90% of bars and restaurants couldn't pay their rent in August, or had trouble paying it, or didn't pay it. It's going to be a tough ride going forward. What do you see the comedy club situation or circuit looking like going forward?
Oh man, so I have a bunch of friends that work at venues, like music venues, and they're sound guys and stuff like that, and bartenders. And so I'm still trying to be optimistic, but I'm seeing that sort of 90% report happening lots of places. I actually just read one about Chicago today. I don't know, man. I think we're in an era of adapting, I think the venues and the bars that are able to figure something out. I know there's a venue in Orlando that they've installed a kitchen, because for a while in Florida, restaurants were allowed to be open and bars were not.
Yeah,
so that they straight up dismantled a room and installed a kitchen. But I think we're going to see a lot of closures, and I hate that. Yeah. I'm trying to be optimistic, but I think that the big comedy club in Austin, Texas just closed. So I think you're going to see it on all levels. I think you're going to see the little 100 capacity black box theater types. I mean,
yeah,
they make their living on
ticket sales and events. Yeah.
I mean, they're
food and drink and everything that a club would normally make their money on.
Right.
But on the positive side, regardless of all this, that is not going to stop Larry Fulford from being a very funny man and moving forward in his comedy career. So where can we find you? Where can people learn more about what you're up to, what's happening in your comedy world? How can we find out more about Larry Fulford?
So I've still got a website for now. It's just larryfulford.com. During this time, the other thing I've done is I've launched a show that I was trying to get off the ground live called What Do You Want From Us, which is where audiences tell the comedians through a voting app or not an app, but a website on their phone. They steer the entire ship of the comedy show. So we were actually trying that online now because it's already weird. The nature of it is weird. So that's just facebook.com/what do you want from us. That's kind of my baby right now.
Facebook.com//what do you want? What do you want from us? Or is it what do you want from us?
Oh, what do you want from us? Yeah.
Okay,
like the proper way.
You're still speaking the Queen's English. Well done to you, my friend.
Right.
So facebook.com/what do you want from us? Check out the episodes. And hey, I'd love to be on one of them going forward. So let's stay in touch.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
All right, friends, you know how to find him. He is, whether you give him a good introduction or a bad introduction, he is the very funny Larry Fulford. Larry, thanks for having us, and we will see you next time on Festival Pass Stories.
This is Festival Pass Stories, a podcast series is told by the people who create and make festivals come to life. You will go behind the stage, kitchen, or studio door to hear the stories of passion and inspiration that started some of the world's most beloved festivals. Hear the startup stories and how an idea went from what if to what's next.